Kupyansk is once again in Russian hands, but only in the videos. The Ukrainian armed forces are capturing assault troops en masse. The operation to clear Kupyansk has become the most successful since the Kursk breakthrough. An energy catastrophe in Ukraine. Almost the entire country is without electricity, heat and water. The State Duma is demanding new strikes on Kharkiv, the collapse of the Kremlin dictatorship. A regional politician has publicly acknowledged the failure of the special military operation and called on colleagues to demand that Putin end the war in Ukraine. Russian negotiators are apologizing for the strike on a passenger train in the Kharkiv region. But attacks on the Ukrainian railway continue. The US-Russia nuclear treaty is about to expire. Trump has not yet made a decision. And Putin's envoy Dmitriev has urgently flown to the US. Xi Jinping is ready to stab Putin in the back. China has prepared a plan to seize a vast territory. In Russia's Far East, the would-be empire is on the verge of collapse. My name is Yulia Kokan, and right now, here are the top stories. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you. Here on the vast expanse of YouTube, the Russians have taken Kupyansk again, though for now only on camera. The occupying forces have filmed yet another Mosfilm-style report claiming to hold the city.
I am the commander of the 3rd Battalion, call sign Lovitz, Hunter. At the moment, I am on the territory of the sugar factory at the command and observation post in the city of Kupyansk. My battalion liberated and now holds the territory of the dairy canning and sugar factories. We took them back in the fall, but the clearing operation took a long time. The factory grounds are large, there are many underground communications, and everything around was mined. We dragged the remaining Ukrainian soldiers out of the factory's basements and pipes. Our companies advanced onto the territory from north to south. One company, from the west, small groups stealthily slipped into the enemy's rear. At that time, the 14th Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces was defending it. We struck them mercilessly. Every structure was like a fortress. But with the support of artillery and aviation, we advanced deeper. We settled in here securely and firmly. No one will drive us out of here.
But what is the real situation in Kupyansk and what is happening on the front lines right now? In our military review,
this is the work of the 151st Separate Reconnaissance Battalion on the outskirts of Kupyansk in the Kharkiv region. Ukrainian fighters are capturing a small assault group of occupiers. Come out quickly, come out! Move, quickly! And this is already footage from the neighboring Kupyansk Uzlovyi, which, according to the head of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, has been captured for several days now by the Sever military group. Today is January 30th. January 30th, behind me is Kupyansk Uzlovyi. And what I like about the Russian army to somehow respond to Mr. Gerasimov is that today a group was already sent here with warrant officers from the 153rd Tank Regiment. Their task is to take Kupyansk Uzlovyi. The Russian soldiers can't capture the city and its surroundings, so they send small sabotage and reconnaissance groups to film a video with the flag in Kupyansk Uzlovyi and claim that the city is under Russian control. The operation to clear Kupyansk and its surroundings became the most successful since the Kursk operation. The occupiers couldn't understand what the real goal of the Ukrainian armed forces was until it was too late. The Ukrainian military did not have numerical superiority, so they improved upon the infiltration tactics that the enemy had used. The assault forces were divided into small squads, each consisting of 8 infantrymen. They moved in different directions to confuse the occupying forces. We decided to carry out assault operations simultaneously in all directions, not openly but covertly. And wherever we achieved success, we built on it. The groups kept moving forward, without engaging in large-scale serious battles. If we detected the enemy, we mainly tried to destroy them using UAVs, while the infantry moved on and cut off the enemy's supply routes. UAF fighter. The attacks by the defense forces coincided with a drop in temperature, rain, and prolonged fog. This hindered Russian reconnaissance. Now, small sabotage and reconnaissance groups are trying to infiltrate Kupyansk and its surroundings, but as we can see, all these attempts are futile. The situation near Pokrovsk is also not turning out well for the Russian army. There, the occupiers suffer heavy losses in countless and senseless attacks.
Here, our brother Mangal's armored tanks were destroyed by fire. I would never wish this on anyone. Just look at how much equipment has been destroyed by the fire. Pokrovsk, Fortuna. either into a coffin or into a trench.
The Russian army has been given new deadlines for the complete occupation of Donbass. Putin wants to reach the borders of Donetsk region by April 2026. And this is despite the fact that the dictator threatened to conquer Donetsk region almost a year ago. The enemy is now at the peak of their capabilities. They've started sending drone operators into assaults together with the infantry. They've stopped sparing them. They need them to be as close to the front line as possible. At the same time, they don't care that it takes time to train a UAV operator. They're willing to expend even such valuable personnel. Ivan Timochka, chairman of the Council of Reservists of the Ukrainian Ground Forces. Unfortunately, in the Dnipropetrovsk region, the occupying forces have captured the village of Zlahoda. This was reported by the analytical project Deep State. In addition, the enemy advanced in the Sumy region near the border village of Hrabovske.
The enemy occupied Zlahodon and also advanced near Hrabovske and Yehorivka.
But these gains also came at the cost of heavy losses. In the past few weeks, losses in the Russian army in Ukraine have sharply increased, and if this trend continues, it will be virtually impossible for Russia to replace these losses without some form of mobilization. In December alone, 35,000 occupying personnel were eliminated in the USSR. I, Zhenya, never cease to be amazed by the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a massive horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. And if you can't do so financially, write them words of support in the comments. I know they're watching us.
The Ukrainian energy system is on the verge of total collapse. On January 31st, almost the entire country was suddenly left without electricity, water and heating due to a voltage drop. Specifically, in Vinnytsia region, the main water supply station stopped working, and in Sumy region, water utility facilities and the trolleybus network lost power. In Chernihiv region, water drainage and heating systems were switched to alternative power sources. In Zhytomyr region, train and tram services were halted, and in the capital, metro trains and escalators stopped running. Kyivvodokanal reported that due to an accident in the power system, there is no water supply in any district of the capital. Due to a drop in voltage in Ukraine's energy system, there have also been serious energy problems in Moldova. In
some localities in Moldova, the electricity went out. This concerns at least Chisinau and its suburbs, Staucheni, Durlești, Vatra, as well as Taraclia, Cahul, and Aneninoi. The National Crisis Management Center reported that the outage was due to adverse weather conditions. Later, this message was deleted, and the government is now reporting serious problems in Ukraine's power grid.
The central database of the Moldovan customs at the border also went down. It was reported that transport was not allowed either into Ukraine or from our side. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Minister of Energy, Denis Shmyhal, reported that a technological malfunction occurred on January 31st. Between the power systems of Moldova and Ukraine,
a technological malfunction occurred, simultaneously shutting down the 400 kilovolt line between the power systems of Romania and Moldova, as well as the 750 kilovolt line between the western and central parts of Ukraine. This caused a cascading outage in Ukraine's power grid and triggered automatic protection systems at substations.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that all necessary work is underway to stabilize the power system in the near future. And just a few hours after the large-scale accident, Ukrainian energy workers managed to gradually stabilize the situation. Some nuclear power plant units were temporarily unloaded, and it will take more time to restore them to full capacity. Meanwhile, the Speaker of Russia's State Duma, Volodin, called for striking Ukraine with so-called weapons of retribution.
Members of the State Duma are insisting on the use of more powerful weapons, weapons of retribution, and on achieving the goals of the special military operation.
Volodin also accused Zelensky of creating new problems for Ukrainians as early as next week. Apparently, this refers to the expiration of the so-called energy truce. Let me remind you, in the Kremlin, this was defined as the duration of the moratorium on strikes until February 1st. The United States has suspended energy assistance to Ukraine. Reuters reports that this concerns funds the U.S. had planned to allocate for importing liquefied natural gas and restoring energy infrastructure damaged by Russian attacks.
However, after USAID was effectively shut down in the first weeks of the Trump administration, some of the funds ended up, according to sources, stuck in a bureaucratic deadlock.
According to two sources, the delay in energy assistance is not due to political pressure, but rather to confusion and internal disagreements between agencies. This concerns a delay of about $250 million, the so-called U.S. energy assistance.
One source said that aides on Capitol Hill are seeking additional information about the frozen energy funds. A Ukrainian official stated that Kyiv is also aware of this, but is concerned that raising the issue could provoke a diplomatic backlash. U.S. President Trump has at times responded coolly to Ukraine's requests for assistance.
The Russians apologized, but the attacks continue. The Russian side privately apologized for the drone strike on a passenger train in the Kharkiv region, which resulted in civilian casualties. Let me remind you, on January 27th, Russia attacked a train carrying more than 200 people with a drone. One of the cars was almost completely burned. According to the New York Times, citing its own sources, Putin's negotiators explained the shelling by saying there was no order to cease fire for certain units of the Russian army. These apologies came after the talks in Abu Dhabi, where the parties discussed the so-called energy truce. In practice, however, attacks on Ukraine's logistical routes continue. According to Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, in just the past 24 hours, the enemy has carried out 7 drone strikes, targeting railway infrastructure facilities. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, train cars were damaged while parked, as well as freight cars, locomotives, power grid tracks, and administrative and production buildings. Local media report that people were hiding under train cars because of the continuous shelling due to the threat of strikes. Ukrzaliznytsia has restricted train traffic between Dnipro and Zaporizhzhia. Earlier, President Zelensky emphasized that after the start of the temporary energy truce, Russia redirected its strikes specifically at logistics. And the advisor to the Minister of Defense, Serhiy Beskreznov, with the call sign Flash, reported that even a bus with people was hit. Flash explained that the enemy is using a new modification of Shaheds, controlled via Starlink. Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, stated that Ukraine, together with SpaceX, is working on countering these attacks. In a direct and public response to the situation, the billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk officially confirmed through his social media network, now known as X, that he is allegedly quite glad and more than willing to provide his assistance to help resolve this particular issue. He further indicated that he remains committed to finding a viable solution and expressed a genuine desire to ensure that all necessary steps are taken to address the concerns raised, thereby solidifying his active role in the ongoing resolution process. Samara politician Yeremyev criticized the war against Ukraine, called on his colleagues to acknowledge the failure of the so-called special military operation, apologized to the citizens, and appealed to Putin with a demand to stop the hostilities. The 69-year-old Yeremyev stated that the stated goals are impossible to achieve, and the Kremlin continues the war only out of fear of admitting defeat.
In order to immediately stop the war in Ukraine, deputies must share responsibility with President Putin for the failure of the special military operation. More specifically, for the failure to achieve the declared goals of the special military operation over 4 years and the overthrow of Zelensky's neo-Nazi regime. The goals of the special military operation have not been achieved today, but in principle they are impossible to achieve. Since the summer of 2022, we have not been able to defeat Ukraine to raise the victory banner over the Rada building in Kyiv, for example, due to the fact that since May 2022, we have no longer been fighting Ukraine, but rather the alliance of NATO countries.
The media reports that other deputies were outraged and unanimously filed a complaint against their colleague. After his speech, he was summoned for questioning. Well then, let's place our bets for now. Will Yeremyev survive the interrogation? A key Kremlin envoy arrived in Miami yesterday. We're talking about Kirill Dmitriev, Putin's special representative. According to Reuters, in Miami, he plans a series of closed-door meetings with people from Donald Trump's inner circle, though exactly with whom has not been officially disclosed. However, sources suggest that these are Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, who have maintained contacts with the Russian side for a long time. Why is this important? Because it is through this channel that Trump's team is trying to promote the idea of a quick end to the war. Donald Trump himself has once again confirmed that peace is very close. The day before, he stated that Ukraine and Russia have a good chance of reaching a peace agreement, despite the personal animosity between Zelensky and Putin. However, even in the United States, the main problem has been officially acknowledged. The U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, stated that the key and, in fact, the only fundamental disagreement between Kyiv and Moscow is the issue of territories. I
think we will find out in the coming weeks and days whether the sides can reach an agreement on territory.
Ukraine's position remains unchanged. President Volodymyr Zelensky has made it clear that there will be no compromises at the expense of Ukrainian land. And now, if you're standing up, you'd better sit down. Right now, here's another dose of nonsense from the Russian dictator Putin. This time, the self-proclaimed Tsar of all Russes claimed that Russian military products are in high demand all over the world. Last year, these so-called unparalleled products were allegedly bought by more than 30 different countries. Yeah, tell that to the Venezuelans with their air defense systems from their friends.
Export contracts overall were steadily fulfilled. Russian military products over the past year were delivered to more than 30 countries around the world, and the total foreign currency revenue exceeded $15 billion.
Well, here they are, the very same unparalleled products that Putin was talking about. As the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. Or maybe it's a new word in unparalleled technology. Footage has appeared online showing how Russians cobbled together a tank machine gun mount out of scrap metal. See for yourself.
PKT mount. 7.62 for a Neva car. The transport position is secured by a stand with a latch. Now we are demonstrating the full rotational capabilities of the device, the mount along with the attached machine gun. The rotation is calculated at 360 degrees. Now switching to the anti-aircraft machine gun position. The locking latch components on the lever mechanism are carefully loosened and released. The mechanical mount has now been fully cocked. It allows you to fire at an angle. The barrel is at an angle of about 60 to 70 degrees, also at 360 degrees.
And now the cherry on top. Real shock content from the Times. The publication writes that the Russian dictator Putin is afraid of computers and smartphones, and that this is a sentence for Russia. Journalists claim that Putin is a man of pen and paper. He doesn't even have a smartphone, and he doesn't use the internet. He governs Russia through a bank of landline phones and encrypted special communications. It's only surprising that Russia, led by such a technophobe, is lagging behind its competitors in the race to develop artificial intelligence. Write what you think. I'll definitely read it. The war unleashed by dictator Putin is hitting ordinary Russians' wallets harder and harder. There's almost no meat left on Russians' tables, and expired products have taken its place. According to the sellers themselves, the number of shoppers in stores has dropped by about 40%. Prices have skyrocketed. And this is only the beginning of the food crisis. In Putin's Russia, after all, you can't spread bread on Shaheds or Iskanders. More on the causes and further development of the looming hunger ahead.
Shortages and empty store shelves are returning to Russia. Retail chains in the Russian Federation are actively reducing their product range due to the population's lack of money. Shoppers simply aren't choosing between different products anymore. Now they just chase discounts in stores. Without them, most people cannot live from paycheck to paycheck.
All kinds of defrosting, pancakes, God willing. Noodles. Delay from work. Overdue for the most part.
In large Russian cities, entire stores and markets selling expired goods are opening. Long lines form for moldy sausage, meat with a smell, and swollen canned goods. For something better? With the Kremlin's current policies, most Russians, especially the elderly, simply can't count on it.
Our whole country eats expired products. From the store to the market. And all the pensioners go to the market just for these products.
Even for those who earn a decent living by Russian standards, prices in regular supermarkets in 2026 are noticeably biting. I really
cry because of the prices. No, I really cry. I honestly start to cry whenever I look at these incredibly high prices.
Since January 1st, everything in Russia has become more expensive, from food and medicine to gasoline and appliances. The reason for everything is the increase in VAT. Its increase by just 2% starting in 2026 threatens to drive up prices for everything in Russia by almost a third.
Girls, I'm honestly shocked by the prices. Just look at this. 2 little bags cost me 5 grand. I didn't even buy anything. How much money did I spend? This is just insane.
But even this isn't the limit. Analysts say that food prices in Russia will keep going up. They'll only keep rising. Remember how recently stores were putting metal tags on butter? Because of the price hike, they were even locking it up in special cases. The average price for a pack is 230 rubles. Now it seems chocolate has taken up the baton so people don't steal these precious sweets.
Yeah, you even see that? Now, even in the region, they're hiding chocolate in those cases because the prices are just skyrocketing. It's already like 39 rubles. People are being forced to steal. They can't even afford to buy a damn chocolate bar. And that's why they're locking them up in boxes so they don't get stolen. That's how it is, guys. And
the reason for all this is the previously mentioned increase in VAT from 20 to 22%. At first glance, it might seem like it's just 2%. But here's the catch. Value-added tax is a tax that runs through the entire supply chain. And in reality, it affects everyone. From the manufacturer to the carrier, from the carrier to the store, from the store to the customer. With each new link, the final product's price automatically adds those very Kremlin 2%. So, the longer the supply chain for a product, the more expensive it becomes. According to Rosstat, dairy products have increased in price by about 35%. Canned goods have gone up in price by a quarter, chocolate candies by almost half. There were various reasons. In some cases, raw materials became more expensive. In others, logistics failed, and elsewhere importers ran into problems. But all of this happened gradually, over several years or a year. But now, just in the first weeks of January, people have felt the price increases especially sharply. Today's food prices in Russia have practically caught up with the average European prices, if not surpassed them. But the quality has remained the same, just like the wage levels across the border. 3,000 rubles today is about $40. To make the simplest vegetable salad, you'll have to spend a quarter of that amount, about $10. For comparison, in Poland, at the local Żabka supermarket chain, the same vegetables can be found for half the price. Although literally just a month ago, the prices were different. For example, cucumber prices in the first months of 2026 rose by 25%. Tomatoes went up by almost a third, and peppers have nearly doubled in price. As for the meat section, as Russians themselves joke, lately it's not recommended for the faint of heart to even enter. In some stores, supplies are running low, and for half a kilo of ground meat, you'll have to pay almost 400 rubles, which is about $5. That's already on par with European price levels. In some places, meat products in Russia are even more expensive. No one in Russia is in a hurry to buy pork trimmings at beef prices or regular beef at the price of elite Wagyu meat. As a result, retail chains in Russia have already started actively cutting staff and closing the majority of their stores. No one is gonna keep that many stores open. Even in a hungry but poor country, no one will do that. Prices are rising gradually, so the current inflation is not the limit yet. Businesses are already in shock. Some entrepreneurs are considering shutting down. To avoid spreading panic, Russian propaganda has disguised the widespread bankruptcies of retail chains as optimization, but that doesn't change the essence of what's happening.
This optimization is taking place against the backdrop of a transformation in retail, with shrinking store spaces and declining consumer purchasing power. In the near future, analysts believe that for a wide selection of goods, consumers will go either to premium stores or shop online. Small businesses will have to develop their own retail operations, work under private labels, or leave the market.
This is especially true for villages and small settlements, where small shops and stores are often the only access residents have to any products. To any kind of products. Most of them won't even make it to spring.
People are still trying to buy less one way or another. And by how much roughly has the flow of customers decreased? The flow of customers has probably dropped by about 40%.
And it will only get worse from here, as Russians themselves admit. Since 2026, a whole range of products has become inaccessible to them, and the list keeps growing with each new price hike.
Do you eat beef often? I don't eat it at all. I don't eat meat at all. Well, what can you do?
So in Russia, almost every second person has become a vegetarian out of necessity and desperation. Even the residents of Russia themselves joke about it.
Listen, I actually feel sorry for those people who eat meat. It's so hard for them. Apparently, I just don't even know. It's tough. Just now I went down to the market. I thought I'd go and have a look. I actually got curious because the prices seem to have gone down. Nope, not at all. They've gone up. By how much? Well, by a lot, honestly. By the way, speaking of your beef, paying almost 1,000 rubles for a decent, high-quality piece of meat per kilogram, it's really not much of a pleasure at all. You know, especially when you consider the cost. I don't know how people who love beef manage.
It would be funny if it weren't so sad. According to Western analysts, the real poverty line in Russia is 3 times higher than the official one. Yes, and according to Russians themselves, it's practically impossible to survive on 15,000 rubles a month, which is the minimum wage in Russia, or even on 25 or 30,000. As a result, thanks personally to Putin and the war he started in Ukraine, more than half of Russians have incomes below the real poverty line. And already today, many can barely afford meat or fish even twice a week. And with each passing month, there will only be fewer such lucky ones in Russia.
This will be done, and it will be done quickly.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Collapse is no joke. A scheme for taking control of 7 million square kilometers of Russian territory has appeared on a Chinese platform. The aggressor country Russia may fall apart. That's why it's in China's interest, thank you, to take control of 7 million square kilometers of Russian territory in the Far East, which previously belonged to China. An article about this was published on December 14th on a Chinese media platform. Details in the report.
China is Russia's main partner, supporting its economy and military machine. At least, that's how the propaganda presents it.
I consider Chairman Xi Jinping to be an exceptionally dependable and trustworthy friend. And he is a steadfast, consistent, and enduring strategic partner. Indeed, my reliable friend and a stable partner and ally of Russia. And this is the fundamental and indispensable cornerstone for the future development of our comprehensive Russian-Chinese relations.
But is that really the case? After all, trade turnover with China is constantly decreasing. Chinese banks are stopping transactions with Russia because of sanctions. And at the same time, China denies that it sells weapons or components to Russia.
China's position on the Ukrainian crisis is consistent and clear. We do not add fuel to the fire and do not use this conflict for our own benefit.
In pairs, in groups of 3, or even tens upon tens of millions of Chinese soldiers. That would be exactly the kind of support we require right now.
What makes you think so exactly?
Why not?
Why? Do you really think it's only soldiers who should...
Oh, I look at the Belgorod region and think how much we're lacking. The Chinese army, the people back...
Just 3 years ago, propagandists were happy that China would replace the Western market. But it turned out that it replaced the Russian one as well. The Russian authorities are trying to patch a giant hole in the budget with a government loan in Chinese yuan.
We just bought an absolutely wonderful and impressive, fully authentic Chinese-made vehicle. Amazing. Many, many times cheaper than the cars we used to buy before. I bought myself 3 pairs. Gucci shoes? 2,000 rubles each. Wonderful. Probably made somewhere in China as well. I hope here too, though. Fake, of course. Now I buy them on principle. Only fakes. And
just look at what, for example, the soldiers are driving. What, Russian-made cars, right? You have to be a real patriot to drive a Patriot because it costs a fortune and breaks down all the time. And the spare parts are insanely expensive. That's why the guys drive Chinese cars. And now they need motorcycles. Russian ones? No. Funny how that works, right? There are very few Russian ones.
No Russians at all.
Exactly the point.
No, Russian motorcycles don't exist. So what then? I wasn't aware of that.
Even the head of the foreign ministry, Lavrov, had a Freudian slip. He basically called Putin Xi Jinping's donkey.
As they say in the East, a guest is the host's donkey. So the entire program, of course, depends on the gracious proposals that the Chinese president and his team made to our president.
And yesterday, my friend and representative of the PRC treated me to this duck. Peking style, to be honest with you, there were 2 pieces on the plate, and I thought I'd only eat 1 piece. You get what I mean, right? But I couldn't resist. I ate the second one too, you know. It was just too delicious.
China has officially approved new geographic maps on which a large part of Russian territory is included. The Ussuri Island is recognized as Chinese territory, and they're also openly discussing scenarios for taking over Russia's Far East, which is rich in gold, diamonds, and oil, which in fact the Chinese have already largely settled.
The Chinese dragon is unlikely to stay within its borders, simply because it actually has, by the way, certain historical claims to a significant part of our Far East. That's a fact.
Of course, in the very beginning there was great enthusiasm, but gradually it began to slowly wither away. And eventually we all came to the painful realization that Iceland had become a Chinese colony. Well, it is quite simply nothing more than a brutal slave-owning enterprise.
Slave owning or a prison, call it what you will, where they put overseers in place so that they keep the workers in check, because there is still resentment no matter what. And the workers went out in Asina for the Asina is not China protest. And they also regularly threaten saying, you won't be able to get a job anywhere in this city. Here's your black mark. So just sit quietly and keep your mouth shut for your 15 to 30,000.
Russian national television is already showing detailed videos about how to find a suitable Chinese husband. And in many Russian schools and government institutions, the Chinese language is now being very actively studied. Song.
When I speak to you in Chinese, my goal is not merely to teach you the language itself or focus on vocabulary. Rather, I am using the Chinese language as a specialized tool to challenge your perspective and encourage you to think deeply for yourselves. By using this medium, I want to help you develop your own independent thoughts and reflections through a different linguistic framework. And that skill will always come in handy.
It reached the point of complete absurdity when Xi Jinping declared that Russia would not have won World War II without China. And Putin silently agreed.
China and Russia, being the main theaters of military operations during World War II, made a decisive contribution to the victory over fascism. And in doing so, they laid the cornerstone of the post-war world order.
It turns out that China is not helping Russia at all, as Putin tries to present it, but is simply taking advantage of its weakness to seize resources and strengthen its influence in Asia.
On February 5th, the nuclear treaty between the US and Russia expires. American President Donald Trump faces a decision on which the future of the nuclear limitation system depends, between Washington and Moscow. This is reported by the Wall Street Journal. This means the removal of restrictions for Russia and the US on strategic nuclear arsenals. Long-range ones? Both countries could start a new nuclear arms race. Agreements on limiting nuclear arsenals have been in effect since the moment they were adopted. In 1972 by US President Richard Nixon and Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev. Now Vladimir Putin is proposing to extend the treaty, at least for a year. However, Donald Trump is in no hurry to respond, writes Reuters. This month, Trump stated that if the treaty expires, it should be replaced with a better agreement. Some American politicians believe that the US president should reject Putin's proposal, freeing Washington from restrictions and allowing the arsenal to be increased to counter the rapid nuclear buildup of a third power, China. Trump says he is striving for denuclearization together with Russia and China. However, Beijing, for its part, emphasizes that it is foolish to expect its participation in disarmament talks with two countries whose arsenals still significantly exceed China's. The White House states that the final decision regarding the future of nuclear agreements will be made by the US president himself. In Russia, however, they note that they are ready for any turn of events. What do you think the US response will be? We would love to hear your unique perspectives and insights on this topic, so please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comment section below to start a conversation with our community members today.